Great show for you guys today. We're going to talk about the state of today's man. I'm joined by a special guest, Rob Kandell, and we are going to dig into love and sex and communication and power, and all of that and more is coming up right now on The Sharp Gentleman. This is The Sharp Gentleman Podcast, a show that explores style, love, and what it means to be a modern gent. Discover what it takes to build better relationships, tackle your goals, and challenge your expectations of what's possible. From insights and advice to stories and powerful questions, you'll get everything you need to take your confidence to the next level and become the man you were born to be. I'm Blake Hammerton. Welcome to The Sharp Gentleman. There's so many messages of manliness out there in the world these days, all vying for more and more of your attention. But which ones are true? Which messages are good for you and which are good for everyone? There's a big difference there. Some influencers will have men believe that the world is getting softer and that men need to focus more on being manly, growing beards, and getting tough. Some are focused on being the best versions of yourself so you can have more authentic impact in the world around you. My personal perspective is that the world is becoming more WIIFM, and that's WIIFM, every day. Now, if you're not familiar with what that means, that's an acronym for What's in It for Me. And it's killing the vibe in everything. We are demolishing our nature so we can be rich. We're poisoning our bodies so we can be thinner. We're naming our kids absolutely asinine things because we think it's cool. Now that kid's going to get beat up or made fun of most of his or her life until they probably go by a nickname or legally change it once they're able to. This is your fault. We don't help our fellow man unless there's something in it for us. There's some upside for us. But we get all the feels when we watch an inspirational clip on Facebook about someone helping out someone else. We don't treat each other with respect or even courtesy anymore unless there's something in it for us. So what's the deal? What's the state of today's man? To answer that question, I've had other guests on the show, and I've been talking to guys all over the country for the last few years just to discover a little bit more about their perspective and what they think. Today, however, I have a treat. In this episode, I'm joined by Rob Kandell, a speaker, author, coach, and innovator in communication. Rob has been helping men find themselves for 16 plus years. An expert in interpersonal communication and relationships, he's helped thousands of students find a more balanced, energized life with better relationships, more sex. He is the co-founder of One Taste. It's a practice in orgasmic meditation. There's a link in the show notes, but you should Google that stuff. And he helps them find more happiness. His coaching style is challenging, fraternal, highly rewarding, and definitely not for the faint of heart. He has been described as part football coach, part loving dad, and part slightly crazed drill sergeant. He is the host of the highly successful podcast Tough Love and the author of the upcoming book Unhidden, a book for men and those confused by them. I love that title. We're talking about the state of today's man. What does he have going for him? What's he up against? What can he do to improve without being seen as less of a man? Often it's not what you're doing wrong that counts. It's what you're doing right. Rob and I are going to dig into what that is and come out on the other side. Yeah, so I guess first of all, Rob, thank you so much for joining me on the episode today to talk a little bit more about, society's view of man and what we want to do and really talk about the book you've got. I think the best part is the end section about and how to understand them more. I loved that part. So I guess the first thing is, more than just the intro I said, who are you? What is the value you bring to the table? Why should we know you if we don't already?
Well, I've had a very interesting life. I always say I was normal until I was about 28, living the American dream, following my father's path to a T, corporate America, house in San Francisco, wife. It looked great, but underneath it, I was unhappy and wasn't even aware about how unhappy I was. I was dissatisfied. I was gaining weight. I was working, 70-hour weeks, climbing the corporate ladder, but not really believing it. And then just had an epiphany. And the epiphany happened at Burning Man in 1998, where my wife wanted to go. And I was like, I don't think I really want to go and be with those people, the hippies and the massage people and the other people. I was really a yuppie. But I went, and then there I sparked and found this whole different side of me. that really has been an epic journey for the last 20 years.
No kidding. So, is there a certain event that became the impetus of the change for you? Is it something that happened at Burning Man, or was it just the general experience of being plugged into people who are more present?
Well, the first was just getting there because I was like, I don't want to go. I'd seen a picture book. This is 1998 when Burning Man was less popular. There was a mere like 18,000 people instead of the 70,000 it is now.
Yeah.
But I'd seen a picture book of people walking around naked, encrusted in mud. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do that at all. I don't like being dirty, like really pristine. But then I got there, got out of the car, felt this breeze wafting over the playa, heard the drums in the distance, a little technical music, and this thought came into me. It's like, you're home. And I was like, what? And I was like, no, you're home. Like, and this part of me just like woke up, and I was like, wow, I could really find a different part of myself. So, there's many experiences after that, but that was the first moment of just total shock to my yuppie self.
No kidding. And I am one of those people who also believes that, sometimes you walk into situations that shouldn't be for you. They're not supposed to be yours. This is not your experience. You're not for that. And then you walk in and you go, holy crap, this is exactly what I don't think I need, but I love every minute of it. So I'm totally for that too. I guess when I look at the things that you've written about and you've talked about on your Tough Love podcast as well, about how we're creating intimacy and some of the things that we're changing and how we're opening ourselves up to being more better connected, better communicating men. I look at some of the parallels between the way that you see the world and the way that I see the world, and some of my listeners as well. We have this sort of separation between how we view that we as humans can create and become and connect and be present, and then the idea that society keeps telling us through media and things like that, here's what men should be, and here's what they used to be, and here's how what we are now is not good enough, and all these things. What is your take? Who is today's man to you?
Well, I believe today's man is in trouble, bluntly, and when it comes down to it. And I think the biggest trouble that men face is that they're not allowed to be in trouble. This viewpoint that being a man, being privileged, being, a white man or a cisgender man enables you, just because you have the privilege, we have the patriarchy, there's no room to even discuss the feelings and the angst and the fear and the scares we have and the inadequacies we feel. And so that's the hardest part about being man, is not having space. And so what we do is we hide, we push it down, we perfect masks. We create facades hidden behind social media platforms, and we put on this show of that everything is great, and underneath it, like me, at 28, everything's great. Underneath it, there's a lot of problems, and so not be able to talk about it, hear about it, talk to other men about it, talk to a therapist about it. It's not socially accepted, and in that we're imprisoned by our own mask.
Yeah, and I think the idea that we're perfecting masks is such a good way to put it, because we all look at, especially men in business, we're used to wearing hats. And so I have to be the marketer, I have to be the manager, I have to be the salesperson. All the things, all the hats we wear, we seem to be really okay with that. And recognizing the hat is an easy thing to do because you put it on, you take it off. And then when we start to unpack that and go, well, actually, these are masks you're wearing. This is what you're hiding behind here, and here's what you're hiding behind there. And then the ego comes in and goes, whoa, no, it's not like that. What are you talking about? Stop getting weird. And so I get that. Push that away. Push down some truth. Push down some exploration, and let's just not touch that.
And we have phones, and we have social media, and we have technology, and so we can live an entire fantasy life, from anywhere. I mean, back when I was a slip of a youth, when I was young, pornography was difficult. I'm 48 to set the time, but pornography was a magazine, or going into a video shop and renting a VHS to acquire porn. And now it is so available, and it's growing. There's so much effect. The butterfly effect of pornography is immense.
Yeah, it is the ability you can have access to anything, anywhere in the world at any point in time, or the tip of your finger. And as much as it allows us to be more connected to more things and more knowledgeable about more stuff because we have access to it, we are the least connected and least knowledgeable, time period of humans I think we've ever been.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But as far as men going now, what does he have going for him? Today's man, what is the positive side for what he's got going for him?
The biggest positive I think out there is availability of information. You can go on the internet, you can find Facebook groups, you can find like-minded souls out there relatively easy. There's meetup.com, which is you can find other like-minded people. There's clubs. So there's the best thing going for them is you don't have to feel alone at any point in time. And so there are options and there are possibilities for connection. Are men using it? Less than I think they should, but there really is an availability. We also live in, surprisingly, the least violent time of our history. There's a book called Better Angels of Our Nature by Steven Pinker, I think his last name is, that discusses the decline of violence. And so we actually live, surprisingly, because media makes it seem differently, but we actually live in the safest time in our recorded history. And we live in a time where women are moving from a subservient position into a powerful position, whereas 30 years ago, men were set up to be the caretakers, and now women are coming up and holding the same level of pay, the same amount of power. There's a definitive power shift. And so men can either look at that like, wow, this is horrible, I feel scared, I'm worried about feeling a manhood, or I can feel nervous about it. There's actually the possibility to look at, wow, I can actually have an equal partner in my woman in society, and it's becoming more and more normal.
And why do we see that as such an issue? Why do you feel like so many men are seeing that as a threat and seeing that emasculated opportunity there and fighting against it so ferociously?
One of my teachers gave me a viewpoint that men get their value from production and women get their value from attractiveness, the ability to attract. So it's a little antiquated, but it does prove, say it well, that men really feel good about what they produce if they have a job. So two things. There's a book called The End of Men by Hannah Rosen that describes the epic change that's happening where men are losing the job. After 2008, a significant amount of mostly men-based industries got squashed in industry and production and really hands-on labor. And so there's this outbreak of men without jobs and women in jobs. And so there's a shift in the dynamic in the Western society about this. And so there's just this epic change for men, and men without production, they have to look elsewhere for their value, and they're not trained to do that. They're not trained to do it inside. And I'll give you a second example. I coach a couple, and the man is from Colombia, legalized, but he can't find a job. And so instead of staying, and the woman makes a significant good amount of money, instead of staying and taking care of their son, he's going back to Colombia because he can get a job, even though the job is a percentage of how much value he provides to his wife. So it's a man needs to feel useful, needs to find value, that it's more challenging to do that today.
Oh, yeah, I can totally understand that. And coming from the entrepreneurial side, there's that part of me that goes, no, don't go back to another job in another place. You can make a job. You can come up with other ways. I want to see people's passions turn into production. And I think that's really, really clear about how well that fits in. Men are looking for success and to feel value by being productive. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the, love language things where, it's a very typical cliche thing. She says, well, I want you to tell me you love me. He goes, look at all the things I do for you. How do you not know I don't love you? Mm-hmm. And it really is, I need you to see that I built the kitchen cabinets, and that's how I tell you I love you. And that's not really how it works sometimes.
Nope. Well, women are demanding more and more for men because they have the option to. There's these, I'm really into statistics and numbers. And so here's an interesting one. So in in the 1980s, the woman's pay was 64 cents to a man's dollar. So for man made a buck, woman made 64 cents.
Okay.
Now, today, millennial women, younger women entering the workforce are at 93 cents compared to a man's dollar.
Okay.
So whereas in the past, in the previous generations, women needed men for financial security, to get a house, to get a car loan, that has radically changed. And so now women are looking at men and saying, do I really want to take on this relationship? I don't need to for financial gain or financial security. And so they have a choice. And the effect is that people are getting married later, 27 and 28, women, men, compared to 21 and 22, probably about 20 years ago. They're having kids later. And a lot of women are just like looking at marriage as taking on a burden they don't want to. And so the whole face of marriage is shifting.
Yeah, and I feel like the idea that they don't need a man for any of the updates, the different schools of thought start coming to mind, where we have the men saying, well, all these women around, they don't need a man in their lives, so there's man haters, and that's not how that works at all. But I think there's this other really beautiful place to play where we talk about how do we create a relationship we both want.
Right.
Because I don't need you to support me. I want you to be here.
Right.
And it can come from both sides, and we can start building something that's amazing. And I think the idea that we're all getting married later and having kids later is so true, because I look around at all my friends. We're in our mid-30s now, and we're just now getting married.
Right. That's right about the average. And underneath it is a call to men to step up. And this is where I'm a little hard on men on my show and in my coaching, because women have really done the work to advance them. And they've had a lot of help, and there's issues about that in terms of programs for girls and things like that. But women have really stepped up and empowered themselves, and there's this whole epic change in terms of women in power. Men haven't, in my opinion, fully stepped up to meet women in this change. And instead, they're kind of quitting. They're kind of whiny. They're kind of like, oh, screw it. I'm going to go get off on porn. I'm going to play video games. And I'm going to buy a sex doll, and it's just good enough. And so instead of the challenge, the new mountain to climb, to love and embrace a powerful modern women, guys are, this is not all guys, but like guys as a generation are kind of quitting. And so my call to men is like, no, don't quit. This could be the most fun ever. You could have the best sex equality and equanimity, and you could have it all, but you got to step up. And you got to work on, as you said in the beginning, your emotional side, your emotional intelligence. And it's a call to adventure, to use the Joseph Campbell term. It's a call for adventure for a man to step up and be the most powerful version of themselves. And then women are like, yes, I have a guy to play with who matches me.
Right, totally. And we are looking around and seeing men it's that they're not so much lazy, because they'll put in the work if they find something that they have value in, but it's got to be just the right amount of work. Mm-hmm. And it feels like there's that just the right amount of playing hard to get, and we're interested. But it feels like, oh, this is an actual mountain, not a molehill. Yes. I don't have time for this.
Right.
And so we quit.
Right.
And I think the reason we don't understand that this is not a mountain that's an adversary, this is a mountain that's an adventure, is that we've never been shown that there's actual value in climbing it.
Right.
There's actual adventure and fun and equanimity and all those pieces that go into making this the biggest ordeal and biggest payout you've ever had in your life.
Right.
We just see it as, oh, it's too much. No, she's crazy. No, I don't know what to do with myself. And oh, I'm going to be emasculated, and I can't be the man of the house. And so all these things that we've told ourselves we can't be shuts us down. So we decide, well, there's nothing in it for me really right now. So I just don't want it.
Right. And this is not to blame men. This is the culture that we live in. This is what we were taught to do. And it really does take agency. It does take desire. It does take commitment to say, I want to break out of the glass ceiling of my emotional availability and my power and my attention. I want to not take the shortcut of, Tinder dating, swiping left, swiping right. I want to work on myself. I want to improve my communication. That's the hero's journey. That's the choice that I think is so courageous of men to do, because it really does break out of the cultural norm that we were raised in.
Well, so the question I have here is that I got a lot of these mixed messages from, you look around social media now, and there are axe throwing stores and axe throwing events they're just showing up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
One, where did that come from? I never thought there was a thing we'd see next to Walmart is like learn to throw an axe with your friends and drink beer. So now we're doing that, but where is this space where men can do these things and become emotionally intelligent and tackle the issues and the shortcomings and the emotional, rigmarole of all of it, while also still trying to be a quote unquote man in front of their friends and peers and loved ones without being called a pussy for trying to, go figure out your own stuff. It's just, there's this breakdown here that is frustrating to watch, and I don't have an answer for it.
Right. Well, the axe throwing thing, I actually read about that. It's a really popular franchise. I read about it in Inc. magazine. It's really fascinating. But the point is that there is a lot available, and this is to my point earlier. There is a lot available. You can just go to Facebook and pick a topic you're interested in, find a Facebook group, and lurk or participate. There's availability. There are so many online programs that are available. There aren't many great books for men out there. There are some, definitely some. So I'm working on that to make a great book for men out there. But there are definitely a lot of books about relating. People like Harville Hendricks is amazing. David Data has a great book for men called The Way of the Superior Man. What else am I reading recently? The names are popping in my head, but there really are many great books out there that can have you expand yourself. There's YouTube. You can just type in anything on YouTube and find and search and get great lectures. There's great podcasts. There's hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there like this one where you can just explore these different parts. I'm an avid reader. I'm a nonstop reader. I keep absorbing more and more books and more concepts out there. And so if you want it, it's one click away from Amazon to find a great book. So there's no excuses anymore. And you can have it the next day. There's no excuses anymore if you don't want to work on it. And you can work on it privately. You can look for men's groups out there, which I think are a great way to do it. There are great men's teachers out there forming groups. A guy named John Weiland, if you want to look up, a colleague of mine, does a great men's program. Trip Lanier does great work for higher level men. So there really are many great teachers out there. A guy named Destin Garrick does sexuality. Another peer of mine, I think, does great work. So there's no excuses anymore. If you want to find it, you can find it.
Yeah, and I think the idea is also, I don't have time. Well, no, you have to make time. No one has time. You just have to make it a priority to learn something, and even if it's 5 minutes a day. So I guess when we look at all the different resources we have and the mediums and avenues we can get information from, what do we as men need to learn how to discern from the messages we get? So I'm sure when we look at things on the news and we read things in the echo chamber of Facebook, that this is how it is and this is who I need to be, what are some of the messages we need to pick up but then translate to make more sense? I'm really interested in social media. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, just because I'm really interested in what's out there. And it's really important not to fall for any of it, because just to know the media is very biased and they're really selling you a message. The main thing is I'm gonna take your question in a different direction. I hope it works for you. So the main thing I want to tell men is that you're a good man. I used to have this exercise when I taught with One Taste, where I ran a men's program, and we'd start off with what we would call this exercise. So a guy and a student would stand in front of me, and I'd say, John, you're a good man. And then he'd go, yes, Robert, I am a good man. But often it'd come out like, yeah, Robert, I am a good man. And I would just be like, well, I felt like you were weak. You didn't really believe it. Say it again. I was like, John, you're a good man. Yes, Robert, I am a good man. I'm like, well, you kind of rushed that. And so what we would do is just get that message, and that exercise would go on as long as 30 minutes until the guy truly believed he was a good man. So regardless of all the noise of social media, your family, all these messages coming towards you, you have to start with yourself. You have to learn internal self-validation. And without that, nothing works. Yeah, absolutely. No, I understand that. And the idea that you really have to understand where your powerful space comes from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you operate as, yes, John, I am a good man, that sort of thing. Being able to stand in that space, but really embody it, really understand it, and be vulnerable. Be able to stand in that space and know you don't know everything, and maybe right now you're going to learn something. But regardless of that, you not knowing can still make you a good man. Just the fact that you're walking in to learn something, you're a good man.
Totally.
The idea that you know everything and that's just the end of it, well, that's a terrible space to play from.
Right. And self-esteem is built upon esteemable acts. Self-esteem is built upon esteemable acts. And an esteemable act is one that builds your self-esteem. So for me, going to the gym with my trainer is a huge self-esteem builder. Being authentic with my business, being in integrity with my business, being honest with my wife about what's going on with me. These are really basic building blocks so you can start to know how good of man you are and continue to expand, because women don't want to be your mother. Okay?
Right.
Women do not want a second or third child or fourth child. They do not want that. And a lot of men are turning into children to their wives. So do the work to find the own empowerment, the own self-belief system, and don't look to her to have you feel right. Build it inside first.
Right. So if we're looking at, the next generation, what are some of the things we need to start teaching our boys?
Well, I have hope for the millennials on one level and fear about the millennials. The hope for
Join the club. We're all the same.
Yeah. God, I love interacting with millennials. The response from the shooting in Florida, the Stone, I forget Marjorie Stone. I forget the exact name.
Stoneman. Yeah.
Stoneman. Wow, those kids knock me out of the park, and I'm just like, it brings me to tears. Basically, how powerful they are. And the other side, the millennials are really hooked on their screens, and there's definitive damage going on, I believe, with not people outside the generation, but for that generation. So the first thing is that your life goes beyond your screen. It's the first generation really growing up, the millennials and Gen Z, where there's a dependence, and toddlers are hanging out with phones, which is ridiculously dangerous.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So the first thing is get off your screens. The second is to find the balance between IQ and EQ. EQ being emotional intelligence. Find the balance between the two, because women have permission to develop their emotions, which are actually getting them the jobs later in life. So if you don't look at it, value both, learn both skills. The third is really collaboration versus isolation. Learn to collaborate with other kids and other people. If that's a team sport, if that's you work on a newspaper, if you work cheer squad, like whatever it is in your training, learn to play well with others, because collaboration, again, is the basis of most of the work out there. Your ability to play well with others enhances your future and also teaches you those social skills to relate, to listen, to emphasize, to hear, to speak, which will enable you to find a better partner down the line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the idea that you're going to play in the sandbox better from a very early age and be able to make eye contact and get away from your screens. This is all we're looking for in politics. Well, I guess the overarching idea is to play in the sandbox well in politics, but on the surface, it looks like we're not good at that at all.
No.
But that's a totally different podcast. But the idea here is, yes, just play in the sandbox, get to know each other, collaborate, build something, create something. And I just want to go back for a second, because I love the fact that you said that self-esteem is built on esteemable acts, and then you said it again slowly. Mm-hmm. Just for the viewers at home, to really just write that down. And I love that part. And so I think there's this really amazing opportunity for things to grow and expand if more people can hear it. And I feel like I know the answer, but what is your big goal for you and all the things that you're doing and the message you're trying to spread to the world?
My main goal is to be a speaker. Growing up, there's a guy named Henry Rollins. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Henry Rollins was in a band called Black Flag. I hate the music, actually, but he also does spoken word, and the most amazing spoken word. And he mixes in his stories, politics, his viewpoints with such a rich passion. And he just tours and just lights people up. And I was so inspired by that. And so everything is really in my business, writing the book, building a speaking career, because I want to be in front of people sharing the richness of my life and my stories. And I have a lot of stories. So they don't feel alone in their pain. They don't feel that they're the only ones who thought that way or think that way. The worst thing that happens is people think something about themselves and then get stuck in what's called terminal uniqueness. I'm the only person with this issue. And so my main goal is to speak as much as possible in audiences to inspire them to get out of their hole, off the couch, off the fence, and make a choice to create motion in their life to move towards their goals. That is my greatest goal to get there.
That is awesome. And I love that because we share similar goals. I want to speak and show people that they can be more, do more, and have more than they ever had before if they just get out of their head and realize that they're not alone. We can do this together. Just man up and step up and take off, the masks and start communicating. So right. Awesome. Maybe one day we'll tour on a circuit together.
There you go. Love that.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you and learn more about all the things you're up to and maybe see you somewhere?
Great. My website, robertkandell.com, that's Kandell.com, is the hub of all my resources. You can pre-order the book, or depending when you're listening, buy the book. That's due November 5th, 2018. I'm doing communication courses in Los Angeles and New York in September and October. I have my podcast that you can listen. It's a weekly podcast, writing nonstop. So pretty much everything can be found at robertkandell.com.
That's awesome. Good. And I'm sure there's so many resources at the website. We can find out more at social media and connect and lurk. A lot of us guys want to just lurk for a bit because whenever we hear someone and we go, oh, that's a good perspective, let me just spy a little bit before we really give them our full attention and admit that we're paying attention. So
love it.
Having a lot of resources and stuff that we can lurk and read more about you is always a good thing.
Thank you.
Right on. Well, it was great to talk to you. I'm so glad that we got this opportunity to connect and talk more about what's going on. Do you have any final thoughts for the listeners and the readers in the blog about here's what's going on, here's what you need to know, here's where you can take action today?
I often end podcasts with that question with the following is, you're doing it right. Most people believe that they're doing it wrong. We live in a society of disapproval where you're told everything you do is wrong. I come from the place that you're doing it right and you can do it better. You can't go from bad to better. You can just go from bad to good and then good to better. So start right now, wherever you're doing it good, you're doing it right. Now let's make it better. And from this perspective, life is just a lot more fun.
Right on. Well, I can't top that. So I'm going to let that just rest where it is. Rob, thank you so much for joining me on this episode today. Again, you guys, I will have all the notes in the show notes. You'll have links to the books and everyone he's talked about in this episode. And if I can learn how to talk, I will finish this. But until next time, keep trying, keep moving, keep writing everything down, keep exploring what kind of ways and what kind of things you can do to increase your EQ as you battle against people telling you you don't have the IQ to do that from the beginning. Keep expanding, keep exploring, and until next time, stay brilliant.
Thank you, Blake.